that should be a little bit better. What's happening, party people? I will try in post production turn my volume up because I got my little one here, and I'm gonna try not to be super loud. But today's episode, I was going to do a continuation of psychedelics in the body, but instead, I'd like to talk about some current events. I noticed that a lot of people in the esoteric and psychedelia, in these kind of niches of content creation, they avoid current events. And the reason they avoid current events is because there is a certain level of detachment that one needs to attain to maintain peace in such a chaotic world. We can't go throwing, tantrums over everything that happens, but it is worth acknowledging what's actually occurring in the world and how it relates to psychedelia. So, for those of you living under a rock, last night Israel began a bombing campaign with the United States against Iran. Now, this conflict has been a long time coming. Israel's been trying to sell us on the idea of a war with Iran for a very long time. I'm personally a millennial. I was born in 1994, and so it's interesting to me, having grown up in the 9/11 generation, seeing the way that we have transitioned out of blind trust in the government to more government scrutiny. The truth is, we still need scrutiny for all power systems, and that is what psychedelia aims to address. You see, the one thing that I tell people is when you take psychedelics, you should be gaining more agency. You should be in control of your situation more. And that's a really challenging thing for people to understand, because most people have no agency. Most people, they give their agency away to their boss, to their spouse, to their mother and father. They have no greater mission in life. All they do is give away their power, and then they wonder why they feel like a drained battery. This is interesting. This is where it kind of ties into the body. Most people are chasing symptoms. When it comes to the body, most of those symptoms of feeling drained, most of the people who have shitty testosterone levels, I'm speaking about men there, most men who have shitty testosterone levels, most women who have low ferritin levels, all of these indicators, these biological indicators that say, hey, I'm experiencing something in my body, right? A lot of this stems from a culture with a... It's okay. A lot of these stem from a culture with a flawed disease model. This flawed disease model is a society that it's established a relationship with dis-ease around symptom chasing, symptom resolution, without addressing root causes. And this all gets tied into the Industrial Revolution. You see, what the Industrial Revolution did for manufacturing, it did for medicine, it did for education. And what that is it systemized everything. When you're learning about the Industrial Revolution in school, the one thing I remember learning about is flintlock rifles, and how prior to the Industrial Revolution, every flintlock rifle was like a custom-made rifle. And then they realized, well, no, we can just manufacture all of these parts and on an assembly line produce them, and it makes it a much more efficient process. What happens is when you have high population levels or high volumes of products that are needed, manufacturing, it makes more sense to factorize it, or what would the word be for that? Basically, to turn it into an assembly line situation. Well, so the same thing's been done for our health. The same thing has been done for our wellness. And they established these authority figures whom we are supposed to trust and give our agency away to. The one thing that being a heroin addict taught me was that the medical institution was not my friend. Before I became a heroin addict, I was an opioid addict, and I was getting my pills from a doctor who, rest in peace, I used to go to his office and I would just kick it and talk about skiing. And then when I was done, he would give me a script for, however many pain pills I wanted, and I would leave. And, I abuse the system. I take full accountability for that. But he actually ended up committing suicide, and he was indicted by the DEA because he was illegally prescribing opioids at the time. This is like 2012 to 14. And so my point being is I lost faith in the medical industrial complex a long time ago. I also grew up in a military family where my mother, even though she was a paramedic, was seriously injured in Iraq. And so for me, seeing my mother seriously injured in a medical role, there was a lot of oversight and at the time a lot of lapse in leadership where she was essentially ignored and they tried to discard her. And if it weren't for my dad's competency and his ability to address these problems, they would have just thrown her under the bus and pulled the classic VA stuff where they say, oh, it's not service related, which is ridiculous, right? So to bring it back to modern events and psychedelia, what happens is we see these events occur, right? Our amygdala downregulates as a response to the oversaturation of stimulation. And dude, if you're constantly exposed to shitty news that makes your cortisol spike, your amygdala downregulates, you become more reactive, you become more angry. And I think that's a recipe for the opposite of empowerment, right? That's a recipe for enslavement. That's a recipe for trauma bonding. There's this phenomenon that's really fascinating when it comes to world leadership. I think people think they have more of a role and ability to participate than they actually do. There's this phenomenon that, if we could even call it that, where if you're playing chess against a superior player, you have to assume that you're not making choices for yourself. You are being led down a series of choices, and whichever choice you make, it all leads to the same place, and that is the desired outcome of the superior player. You always have to assume that, right? Well, when it comes to government, they've been in the propaganda game a lot longer than we have. And though there are some characters that break out, most people do not. And the reason is the propaganda game is so strong. And then when they can't get you with propaganda, they use the threat of violence. They have a monopoly on violence. This is all the antithesis of the psychedelic world. The psychedelic world aims to empower the individual so the individual can participate in the collective in a conscientious way. If you are taking plant medicine and you are not being empowered and you are not gaining more sovereignty over yourself, then you're missing the fucking point. But every day, there's this book by Wilhelm Reich, and this book it's largely debated. There's a lot of pushback in it, especially when it comes to the kind of sexuality aspects of it. But Wilhelm Reich wrote this book called the mass psychology of fascism, or the psychology of mass fascism. I'm dyslexic. I don't know where mass goes in that title. But in this book, he talks about how most people will give away their agency to someone else because it gives them an element of plausible deniability. If I outsource the decision making to you, then I am also outsourcing the responsibility to you. Meaning, if I give my health decisions to you and I get sick, it's not my fault, it's yours, right? We have decision fatigue. And so instead of learning how to navigate the nervous system and becoming more empowered and more educated, what we do is we give it to people who we believe are more empowered and educated than us. And this is the greatest threat to the world in every sense of the idea. The greatest threat is people giving away their agency to authoritative figures and power structures that, let's be honest, they should be aged out, dude. I saw this thing today about Donald Trump, Kim Jong-un, the Ayatollah of Iran, Netanyahu, all these guys. They're all in their 70s. They're old as shit. My cousin hit me up after Joe Biden was elected. He's like, Josh, you're going to be so mad at me. I voted for Joe Biden. And to clarify, I wasn't like a Trump person or a Biden person. I am this whole system is fucking broken person. So I do not participate in the election. Therefore, I get a say. And you guys don't, because you're all dumb enough to participate in this election. No, I'm just joking. Sorry, you're not dumb. You're just maybe misinformed about where your votes are going and how we could actually regroup, get together, and change the world. But he said that to me, and I said, let me ask you something, Jeff. My grandfather is 83 now, but at the time that Joe Biden was elected, he was in his late 70s. My grandmother's like maybe 74, 75. And I said, would you let grandma and grandpa take control of your bank account and make your life decisions for you? And he's like, oh, of course not. I'm like, exactly. Why would we do that with a government? Why would we let elected officials in their elder years make decisions for us? It just, like, it doesn't make much logical sense. We have a bunch of vampires in office, dude. These people who don't want to die, right? They may or may not be drinking the blood of, innocents. And they are trying so hard to maintain control. And what's interesting is it's not real power. Power exerted over individuals through coercion and manipulation is not real power. And so when people see that and they get that decision fatigue, they tend to think they're helpless. But the truth is, they're the ones who are powerless. And that's why they do these displays of control and power, is because they know that we have the real power. We have the mushroom on our side. We have God on our side. And if we chose to stand up at any moment, we could completely disrupt this entire system. Any system that does not empower you and create more agency and sovereignty is a system built on manipulation, just plain and simple. And so moving forward, I don't think it's hopeless. I think there's very much a way for us to navigate this. I don't think that we're completely screwed. Even if this war with Iran turns into this, prolonged war, even if civil war breaks out in the United States, these are things that have happened around the world for years and years and years. And we've sat on the sidelines and instigated like a kid with a magnifying glass, burning the anthill. And the truth is that in order for something new to come, something old must go. This is the law of equal exchange. In order for a new world to be created, the old world must be burned to the ground. And most people, this is where a lot of reservation comes. You get things like the America First movement, stuff like this. They go, make America great again. Look at that slogan. The truth is a lot of this shit was never very great. It was great for certain people, and people liked it because back then you did not have access to information. It's the same with anxiety. People talk about how terrible the world is. It's like, the world's not that terrible. You just have a phone in your hand that allows you to access news from all around the world in an instant. You can watch videos of, Charlie Kirk being assassinated on the internet in real time. That was kind of a collectively crazy experience. Especially, I've made enough videos. I've been flagged on the internet so many times for trying to share my wisdom with all of you. And each time it gets flagged before it even gets posted. And so it's interesting to me that all of a sudden, TikTok, gets taken over by Larry Ellison of Oracle, and a lot about him that's very fascinating. And then all of a sudden we're censoring everything, but we're also allowing assassination videos. And why do we do that? Well, because it's a tool of control and propaganda. So in today's day and age, if you really want to survive this transition, what you need to do is develop agency, a desire for agency above all else. And you need to instill in your children, if you're a parent, agency. And you need to instill in yourself agency. And you need to trust yourself. You need to trust God. And you need to build community. And that is all the psychedelics are trying to show us. They are trying to show us the mirror. It's trying to say, look, these are the efficiencies and inefficiencies of the human race. And right now, the greatest inefficiency of the human race that psychedelia aims to address is the power struggles, the narcissists, the psychopaths that are in positions of power that are manipulating you and I for specific outcomes. And the truth is the second we decide to stop participating in their system, the system ends. And I'm not suggesting doing anything irrational. What I'm suggesting is that we stand up and we speak up and we make decisions that are beneficial to not only the 1%, but the masses, right? How do we give the masses agency? What's crazy is they will do everything in their power to take away your agency. That's why these phones are so dangerous. The phone isn't dangerous because, the misinformation necessarily. It's dangerous because it's going to overload your system, give you massive cortisol spikes, and then it is going to deplete you of your willpower and in turn deplete you of your agency. It's also going to influence you. I was thinking about this recently. I was talking with a good friend. We were talking about how no one has original thoughts anymore. The first time I recognized this was actually I did one of those 10-day silent meditation retreats. And what's really interesting in Vipassana or a 10-day silent meditation retreat is that after day 3 or 4, after you've thought all your thoughts and you get the technique down, the narration starts to disappear and you start to become aware of the fact that you are not the creator of most of these thoughts. These thoughts are being impressed upon you, and you are more of a receptacle device of sorts. You're a receiver of thought. And so when you learn to, navigate and discern what is best to think and what is not best to think, it'll transform your life in ways that you could not possibly imagine. And so these are wonderful tools for creation. Look at this video I'm creating now and putting out into the universe so someone out there can find this. It's very important that we do that. However, the consumption of videos, especially when it comes to slop, when it comes to things that trigger us, things that desensitize us, it's very important that we do not participate in those things. But it's so hard because as human beings, it's hard to look away from the burning building. It's hard, a great example is whenever you're on the highway and there's a car accident. That's what causes traffic. It's not the accident itself necessarily. Most of the time, it's people slowing down to see what's happening. And that's because communication, visual communication, is mostly what we rely on. It's the greatest form of sensory information that we rely on in order to establish a baseline of truth. Oh, I saw it. I saw it with my own eyes. But our eyes can be deceiving, especially in the world that we live in. And basically where I'm getting at is if you really want to participate in regaining agency and changing the world, it starts with limiting the amount of consumption of just absolute, utter trash. Limit it. Become a fucking Amish person as best you can. Limit the amount, back to the body we talked about yesterday. Limit the amount of food that you're consuming, the energies that you're consuming, the content that you're consuming, and anything that spikes your cortisol, makes you feel really stressed or uncomfortable, or seems like a tool of propaganda. I would recommend completely cutting that out of your consumption, right? If you want agency to return, you need to start addressing the power struggles in your own life. And one of the things that's going to give you the awareness to do that is psychedelics. It's always been one of the greatest tools for revelation, one of the greatest tools for increasing awareness. And so the question is if we know that these tools are wonderful, if we know that these tools could change the world, why are we not using them more, and why are we not recommending them to others? That's the answer, is take these medicines, give them to the masses, and allow people to regain their agency. It's going to be a bit messy. Do I think everyone should take psychedelics? No, I think there are some people who unfortunately, they're not grounded enough. See, here's the thing about psychedelics that a lot of people don't understand. What makes someone insane? It's just abstract thought. That's in the DSM, schizophrenia used to be described as like erratic, abstract thought, right? Without basis in reality, something like that. And what's funny is that abstract thought alone is not a grounds for diagnosis of any sort of mental health disorder. What makes it a ground for diagnosis is actually the lack of groundedness. Can you talk about the fact that life might be a simulation without panicking, freaking out, becoming dysregulated, sounding like a paranoid individual? If you can do that, then that is phenomenal. And that means that you're probably someone who can handle psychedelics because they are going to challenge your perspectives. They're going to make you aware of things you were not otherwise aware of. And this is going to help you reestablish agency. By agency, if there's people who aren't understanding this, I have had people ask me about agency. Agency just means governance. It means you are the one in charge of you. It's the ultimate accountability. It means I'm not going to give away my responsibility, my obligations, my peace of mind to anyone. I am in control of that. That's what we want to reestablish is agency, individual sovereignty. Most people have been hijacked by the system and powers that be, and we want to change that. Psychedelics are, without a doubt, the greatest tool to change that. So, and the other thing I'd like to say is psychedelics kind of lend some awareness to the nature of reality. And one of the things about the nature of reality is that there is this dualistic nature to reality. There is a contrast, there is a a focal point and a contrast to that focal point. And oftentimes it's this ebb and flow, this change, this constant change, this infinity sign between different focal points, right? Different polarities to kind of like relate to. So what I mean is, Star Wars is a good example. Sometimes the Empire is in power and the rebels are getting destroyed, and then sometimes the rebels fight back and they have these triumphant moments, but no one power is ever in control. And that's why individual agency and sovereignty is the most important thing, is because there will never be static peace. There will never be freedom from suffering. We will always have to resist tyranny. We will always have to resist evil and darkness. And that evil and darkness will be contrasted by goodness. And goodness will be contrasted by darkness, right? This is, again, kind of a law of the universe. You could break it down into equal exchange, right? For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. I think that's Newton's third law. So when it comes down to it, we have to be at peace with that. We have to be able to regulate through that. The world can fall apart around you just as it has for millions and millions of people over the history of time, and many of your ancestors, and we must prevail. We must maintain. We must continue. And the way to do that, man, is to develop agency, sovereignty, and also, just a personal recommendation here, have a bunch of babies. Even if you think you can't afford them, the irony of most Westerners and their concepts of like morality and how it's morally incorrect to have children because the world is falling apart. You need to birth resistance fighters, right? And I'm not talking violence. Violence does not ever work. And they use violence as a means of propaganda. If you are violent, they will use that as a reason to be more violent, and they have a monopoly on violence. Resistance fighters will be the meditators. They'll be the people who can regulate, the people who have agency, the people who say, no, I won't stand for this. That's what we need to raise. And those people do not have any class specification, right? They are not rich. They are not poor. They're not middle class. They are people of all backgrounds and stereotypes as socioeconomic status. And so most people are thwarting our greatest tool, which is our numbers, right? By actively participating in not having children. We need people to stand up and fight. We need children who will speak their minds, who are not afraid of authority. We need those children. We don't need obedient little kids. We need children who are ready to fight spiritually. We don't need kids who are necessarily ready to fight. Although I think martial arts is great too. Teach your children martial arts because they're much more likely to be controlled when they feel the emotion of anger. I know that since I started, training in combat sports about a decade ago, I've had a lot of opportunities to fight come up, and I walk away from every single one because I know what I'm capable of, and I don't need to prove anything to anyone. And the safest thing oftentimes is to leave, especially in a world where people are so dysregulated. Oftentimes, bro, someone will try, start a street fight with you. You don't know if they have a gun. You don't know if you're going to choke some dude out in front of his girlfriend, and as a result, he's going to go get a gun. And unfortunately, I know firsthand stories of multiple people this happened to, who they embarrassed some dude and he came back with a gun. And we don't want that. So violence does not answer our questions. It does not solve our problems. You want to be steadfast. You want to be strong. You want to train. If the need arises and someone is an aggressor and violent towards you, then by all means defend yourself. But ultimately, what we need is agency above all else. And athletics will help you get that as well. If you want to believe in yourself and know that you're capable of kicking someone's ass, so you have the choice to walk away, you should probably train and learn to kick someone's ass. Anyway, I think that's where we'll wrap it up, man. I really I'm praying for all of you. I know the world is a scary place right now, but I'm telling you, be optimistic, right? Be the change, dude. It feels helpless, and it is in a lot of ways, but I'm telling you, this is the nature of the universe. It ebbs and flows. There is no static. Change is the only, the one universal law is change. Everything is changing. Every millisecond, something new comes. If you're having trouble with that philosophy, maybe go check out Zen Buddhism, check out a Vipassana, learn meditation. But you'll start noticing in your states of awareness and consciousness that change it's the only constant. And all you have to do is be able to deal with the sensation of change as it arises. But I also think that, this is an amalgamation of tools that one needs to become a Jedi. You don't just become a Jedi. The way you become a Jedi is through nervous system regulation, rites and rituals involving plant medicines, and then also, have children, live in the matrix. This is where we are, dude. So many people, they talk about bugging out. I'm leaving the matrix, dude. You want to, buy my course so you can escape the matrix. And that's not me talking shit to course sellers. In today's day and age, you have the ability to make money online. You should definitely be making money online. But there's also this aspect where, more than escaping the matrix, you should learn how to live in the matrix. Learn how to be here, how to feel the feelings. Don't try to escape it. And don't think that money's going to solve your problem. Money used to be gold backed. What is gold? Gold is very high frequency. It's currency. It's energy in motion, right? And so our money used to be representative of gold, but it's not anymore. It's a fiat currency. And so what does that mean? It means that the energy that we once got from gold no longer exists in the form of money. And so we pursue money as a means to sustain our lifestyle, our livelihood, our families, whatever. But we're chasing, a promise of energy that doesn't exist. So, yeah, ball's in your court now, dude. Find a way, create community, establish agency, have a shit ton of kids, right? And when it comes to kids, man, I keep it real simple. I'm not worried about the specifics of fatherhood. So many people, they're fatherhood coaches. They're, teachers of fatherhood, and they'll try to sell you on all these, like, oh, do this. Nah, not me. Having kids is half the battle. I'll let you know a secret. My dad, he had a child when he was in college that we didn't find out about until 3-4 years ago. And she came to visit, and she's just like him. She has his mannerisms. She talks like him. She spaces out like him. She's like a spitting image of him. So I think a lot of people, they emphasize, because they live in their emotional bodies, like, oh, the perfect parent is someone who's there every day. And no, bro, the perfect parent is someone who gives you life. That's it. That is the number one criteria for being a perfect parent. Money, all this shit, it's bullshit. You are your own person. The ball is in your court. You're responsible for you, and you have agency. Your trauma is a story you tell yourself, and everyone has one. And as soon as you become an initiate of the fungi or, the ayahuasca or something like that, it will show you the truth. The truth is that life is deeply traumatizing, and as soon as you can take accountability for that, accept what has happened to you, forgive what you can, and, acknowledge what you can't forgive, and let's walk into a new future together, dude. A lot of people have been calling this New Earth. I don't think it's New Earth. I think it's acknowledging where we are in this earth and in these cycles, and allowing this death process to begin. So before we can create the new earth, I think we got to let the old one die. And the way we let the old one die is let the old paradigms of thinking die. Let the forms of control that they've had over us, let those things die. Then we can take care of the rest. So as always, I love you guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. My name is Fatherhood. I'm going to shamelessly plug my music. You can check out my music. I talk about all this stuff in my music. My name is Fatherhood, the rapper. You can check me out everywhere. I appreciate all the support. Appreciate the new followers on here. I know we are just getting started. I've got a lot to talk about, a lot to share with you. I know you guys are eager to learn. So, as always, much love. I was going to say bye, but she's asleep. All right. Love you guys. Peace.